Hello, everyone. My name is Kirk Bachman, and welcome back to The Ultimate Dish. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Lentine Alexis, chef, endurance athlete, Ayurvedic practitioner, and trailblazer in the world of holistic sports nutrition. Lentine's journey into food and performance began nearly 2 decades ago while training as a professional endurance athlete on a subtropical island in Japan. Struggling to fuel her training with traditional athlete foods, she began to reimagine nutrition through a more intuitive, flavorful, and I love this, joyful lens, one rooted in real food and personal connection. She holds a diploma in patisserie and baking from Le Cordon Bleu, a BA in social ecology and economics, and is a certified holistic nutritionist, Ayurvedic health counselor, yoga and breathwork instructor, and sports performance coach. Over the past decade, she's worked as a consultant, recipe developer, and wellness advocate within the sports nutrition world, guiding others to fuel not just performance, but purpose. Lentine's culinary philosophy goes against the grain, encouraging athletes and everyday eaters alike to nourish themselves through flavor, intuition, and again, joy. Through her teaching, writing, and personal stories, she invites others to pursue their wildest dreams with food that fuels both body and spirit. So get ready for a conversation about redefining nourishment, listening to your body, and building a life and a plate filled with intention. And there she is. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Kirk?
Well, I'm a little exhausted and I'm probably going to need some replenishment after that amazing bio. I'm so excited that you're here. We we have the occasional Boulder locals on the show. Recently we had Hosea Rosenberg from Black
Cool.
Belly,
I
and
love him.
yeah, he's amazing, and so super happy to continue this trend today with you, Lentine. And I have to give some love to my wife Gretchen, who really put me in touch with you through social media. We love following your adventures on IG, as she calls it. It's whether it's sharing a recipe or going on a bike ride in Boulder with your son, your content is the word I like to use. It's peaceful, right?
Oh,
And
thank you.
so yeah, we have a little bit of a script here, but as we talked earlier, I'm going way off the script. I'm super,
Cool.
super excited. We were joking earlier that you have a calmness about you. I don't. So I'm going to try to balance that somehow. But let's just start with how long you've been in Boulder and how much do you love Boulder?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Boulder,
Oh, wow.
actually.
Which high school?
I went to Boulder High
All right.
and
All right.
yeah, and and I grew up right at the foothills of the Flatirons, which was a really incredible place to be. I remember scrambling up one of the trails that like exited out of our neighborhood and up to the star, the famed star that
Yeah. Yeah.
illuminates from Thanksgiving to New Year's or whatever. And then I left and went to college in New York and ended up moving to the Southeast and then to Asia and then, or excuse me, first to the Southeast and then to Europe and then to Asia and then to the Pacific Northwest and all the way down to California and then moved back to Boulder about 12 years ago now.
And that's about when we came back. I grew up first Chicago, then the Gunnison Crested Butte area, which is like
Beautiful.
really removed, right? So
Yeah,
in
so
high school,
beautiful.
we would play sports, in the Boulder area and stuff. And I have to say, having been gone for a long time, back to Chicago again, the Pacific Northwest, and then here again, boy, Boulder has changed, right?
You know, there are, th I was just, I feel like I get into this conversation with a lot of people in Boulder, and I
Especially
think
now with
there,
Sundance and everything, right?
oh yeah, there's so many people, there are things about Boulder that have shifted and that are different for sure. And like if I walk down on Pearl Street, I don't remember exactly what buildings were where, right? And the people are coming, like more visitors are coming and places and trails and quiet, like secret spots in the mountains that no one knew about have definitely been discovered. But at the core, people, my dad moved here because he took a job at NCAR and then was an astrophysicist, worked at Ball, and he moved his family here because he wanted to be close to the mountains
Yeah,
and
yeah.
wanted to be able to, Boulder's surrounded by an incredible trail system and land that will never be developed. It's a really, really special place in that regard. We have so much nature right around us. And people that live here value that, and the people that move here value that. And that's not changed. It's still exactly the same that, we know a lot of friends in our close group, people who weren't born in Boulder, who moved here for quality of life and for access to nature and connection to nature. And that is the same. It's just that the companies that they built were successful and they now moved the companies here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's something that's like a little bit feels like a pain pinch, right? The density that Boulder might be achieving feels much, much different than it was when I was a little kid. But ultimately, I wish everyone could live in alignment with the natural world and spend more time moving their bodies and breathing fresh air and eating beautiful food that's grown locally. Like all of those are things that I wish that every community would embrace and value. So I can't really complain about it,
No,
unfortunately.
that's so beautifully said. It's one of the reasons, we started the Escoffier School here about 12 years ago, and in many ways, that was the reason. We wanted
Yeah.
a smaller community that had sort of this educational vibe. CU
Yeah.
took care of that for us. We did the same thing in Austin with the
Yeah.
University of Texas. So, if I could, and I have to say, what I love about your comments about Boulder, they're so consistent. We have a really good relationship with Bobby Stuckey and all the folks at Pizzeria
Yeah.
and Frasca, of course. A lot of our students all aspire, why'd you
Oh
come to
yeah.
Boulder? To go to
Bob
Frasca.
Bobby is amazing. He's such a dear friend of ours. Yeah.
Is so great. I figured he was, and Brian from Carita, and every morning I get inspired just jumping on and seeing where Bobby ran, or
Yeah.
or where he rode his bike, or what you've been up to, and some other friends that I mentioned, Lauren Lewis doing yoga in the park. That's very, very special. I know you can find that in different places,
Yeah.
but not so close like
Not so
we
close.
do in Boulder. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to be very close to an organization called No Kid Hungry, and they have something called Chef
Yeah.
Cycle. And
Yeah.
there were many years where my schedule allowed me to go and do Chef Cycle. And I met so many really incredible chefs, all of whom were just getting into cycling, right? They were just getting into, they had, to be honest, a lot of them had finally reached a pinnacle of success in their careers where they were able to step away from their restaurants and their work and take care of themselves again.
Mm.
And Bobby and Brian and other chefs in our local community here, and even chefs that I know from the Los Angeles area, like, Travis Lett, some others, where
Oh yeah. Mhm.
their natural cycles and their connection to themselves and to nature were never pieces that left them. And in my opinion, it's really influenced their food. It influences the way that they eat. It influences the way that they're able to show up in their communities and the way that they think about their responsibility as chefs. And that's like I just think that's a really important piece of a food community is having people who tend the food who are also able to take care of themselves so that they can feel it and understand the value and think about our planet, that sort of those sort of trends. And
No,
Boulder's a wonderful place for that.
fully agree. And what's really interesting is that they've been able to, when you walk on the Frasca to a person, there's a culture there,
Yeah.
whether it's Serge or Ian, who's the
Yeah.
chef there, is also a Le Cordon Bleu graduate,
Yes.
Atlanta. We joke about that. But they're all here for the same reason, right? They want
Yeah.
to provide incredible hospitality, but they also take care of themselves, right?
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely love that. This is a quote from you, guiding others to fuel not just performance, but purpose. Can we sort of open with that? What
Sure.
does that mean?
Yeah, when I work with a lot of professional athletes from multiple year Olympians to professional freeride skiers and free riders and then everyday athletes too. And a lot of the way that every one of those individuals looks at eating and fueling is from a place of, of fuel, right? Like I'm going to put in this thing because I want to get this output. And that's something I certainly experienced as a professional athlete when I was working with my coaching team and the nutritionists that were guiding me. There was a very real piece of like, we need the B vitamins, so put this in. We need carbohydrates, so put this in. We need the proteins, and that. completely separated me from joy. We've talked, you've mentioned, I use the word joy a lot, just like the
Such a great word.
just the
Yeah.
feeling of like being connected to my body and being in awe of what it can do. And when I am eating and nourishing myself in a way where, I'm cellularly aligned and bioenergetically balanced, I can be philanthropic, I can be creative, I can be outgoing, I can push myself beyond limits that I think are reasonable. And that is something that measured fueling cannot do.
Mm, mm.
If you, like an analogy that I like to give with my athletes is if you think about the, let's say you're a 100-meter sprint distance runner and you're trying to set the world record. You're not thinking about your muscles aren't like, here's how many calories we have. It's not measurement. It's like you have to trust that you have what that base, that power, that spirit within you to blast through your old definition. And that has nothing to do with macronutrients. Nothing.
No, no.
And and every single day can be like that for us as human beings, where there's just endless possibilities of the things that we can do and achieve and connect and become. And that's where the purpose piece comes in. Like, what are we here for? Is it to get a medal at the local race? Is it to just like cross the finish line? Maybe, and maybe that is the purpose. But being able to connect to what makes you joyful, what makes you tick, is something that dense nourishment in a way that can't be measured gives you.
Can
I hope
I had to
that
write a
makes
few of
sense.
those things down because it was so insightful. This is not on the script. So, as I told you earlier, I went up to the University of Oregon with my son a weekend ago, and he was at a pretty cool baseball camp showcase, they called it. And you just triggered something for me because one of the coaches who was talking to the players around nutrition and listen, when you're a baseball player at the University of Oregon, you're going to see the dorm over here. You're not in that dorm. You
Right.
stay over here because
Yeah,
we control your
totally.
schedule, your workout, your diet. And he talked about, you said the word blast, and I love
Yeah.
that word. He used the word explosiveness.
Yeah.
Is that something you concur with? I mean, this idea that
Yeah.
you have prepared your body to explode. It's all my son's
Yeah.
talking about now. Is, Dad, I
Totally.
need to get explosive. I need to
Yeah.
be explosive. He's going to be a sophomore in
Yeah.
high school. So,
Yeah.
is that connected? Are we talking about the same
Yeah,
things
we're talking
here?
about the same thing. It's
Okay.
just this, there's like I think when you're, especially when you're working with athletes who, like for example, I have one client, an athlete that I've worked with for many years now, she's a professional freeride skier. She's come into the Olympics many times, and now her work is to pick mountains in the world that she wants to ski down,
Wow.
right? And you
I
can't
want to
be
sign up
questioned.
for that.
Right? Amazing. Just like just chills. Like when you look at this
Yeah.
woman's biometrics, it's incredible how strong her body is. And like the capability of doing this comes from a place of you're like, first of all, you're not like, oh, I'm worried I'm not going to poop. Got that locked down, right? Like,
Okay.
sorry to jump ship to a different place, but
Check.
you're
Yeah.
not all the things that we're thinking about as like individuals who are struggling to navigate the noise, right? Like, do I need more protein? No, you are eating, you are living, you are breathing in a way where you've got this foundation of being like, oh yeah, I can do this impossible thing. And that just in Ayurvedic wisdom, we call this ojas.
Okay.
And
Okay.
ojas is translates directly to vitality, and it's fueled and mm, I'll say like juiced up by three things: rest, which means sleep, but also like psychological and emotional rest from things that challenge us. It's fueled by joy. So just doing things that make us genuinely happy, connecting with our people, sharing a meal, standing on top of a mountain and breathing fresh air, walking
Mhm.
through the wildflowers and brushing your fingers up, cuddling your dog or your favorite person, whatever it is. And it's fueled by dense nourishment. This is beautiful food. This is delicious food that has tons of flavor, which by the way is connected to nutrition from an Ayurvedic perspective. And these three things give us this stable foundation to do the impossible. And so trusting that and trusting that as a framework, as opposed to one that counts out measurements and uses individual packets or macronutrients or scales to measure what we should be putting in, is where I'm coming from. That's this purpose. And it can be, I'm going to be the best mom I can be, or I'm going to run my fastest marathon time, or it can be, I'm going to create a foundation that benefits this, or I'm going to start a company that does that. It's all from the same place.
It feels simple, right? Rest, joy, and dense nourishment, but it's
It's very
not, right?
challenging.
The rest is one of the toughest, right?
Totally.
Depending on how busy we are, right?
Mhm.
Um, do you know Kelly Newland at all from
Yes.
Rad? Oh God,
Yes.
she's
Yes.
she's also a culinarian. Went to school at CIA. She worked with us forever.
Yeah.
Still comes running when I call. She's
Cool.
amazing. Super, super cool. I have to. Noelle is dying already now because she could tell I'm way too comfortable. I'm way off script. I'm way over time, but I don't care. I'm in charge. I'm having so much fun.
Okay.
And if you run out of time, just tell me because
Okay.
I'm gonna keep going. I'm having so much fun. I
Okay.
know that, and I didn't know this. I should have known it, but you spent 10 years with Rafa, and
I'm still with them. Yeah.
oh, you're
I
still
still
with
write for
them.
them.
You're still
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
And I don't look like a cyclist, but I
Good.
love cycling. Love cycling. I was at the World Championships in Colorado Springs like 50 years ago,
Cool.
and maybe not that long ago. It used to be really big, in the Crested Butte area. They did a lot of criteriums up there,
Yeah.
and I did a little bit in college. But when I go to Rafa and you talk about culture and when you hear the clicking of the cleats coming in and
Mhm.
the riders are putting their bikes up and they're getting a cappuccino or an espresso and they're talking about their ride and they're watching races on the screen, and of course the apparel is insanely beautiful. Can you talk a little bit about that experience? I think it is. I've been to Rafa in Chicago. I've been in London. Wherever I go, I try to go, right?
Cool.
I'm in Nice and I look for a bike shop just because I love the culture there. How important is Rafa to Pearl Street to Boulder, Colorado? Sorry,
Yeah,
I
that's
should get money for this, but I love the
yeah.
place. It's my
Yeah,
place. It's my space, right?
totally. Well, the clubhouse in Boulder is a really special place in our house because I joined, I was a professional, I say professional endurance athlete, which I was racing for Cliff Bar. I was doing pretty much any type of endurance challenge I could get my hands on, but I landed in a place where I started doing a lot more road cycling because the culture was there. I wanted to meet friends. I didn't want to just train on my own. I didn't just want to hammer myself into the ground by myself someplace. I enjoyed the challenge and the like experience and the adventure of riding with others. And so I joined Rafa as an ambassador in 2015. And that was the same year that I met my now husband here in Boulder. He was a professional cyclist. And they had approached me about, like, oh, we're opening this clubhouse. Would you be interested in being a part of this? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. And also they needed somebody to actually like run the place. And so my husband was in a place in his career where he had an opening. And so he joined Rafa and he was the general manager of the clubhouse. And at that time, the business model included that all of the clubhouses around the world had a cafe. And so I don't know if you would remember this or not, but I designed the menu for the Rafa Cafe here in Boulder and also for the one in Los Angeles. And some pieces of that spread out to Chicago and other spots because we created a menu that was really easy to implement by anybody, anywhere. And so that store opened on Pearl Street in with this beautiful, simple menu. We had a rice bowl, we had some like fancy
Yeah,
toasts and a couple
yeah.
things. And because we didn't have a full kitchen, and because we were able to just kind of like we were using a rice cake, or excuse me, we were using a rice cooker, a sous vide machine, and basically like a blender and a Cuisinart to make our menu. And we were able to not charge very much for our food. And so people from all over Boulder, whether they were cyclists or not, came to the clubhouse and they were eating lunch with us and they were watching races on TV and they were touching the clothes and they were getting a chance to connect with, and again, they didn't have to call themselves cyclists. They were just coming to Rapha to enjoy. And so, and eventually the menu, that business model no longer fit the goals of the business. I wish that it would return, but the clubhouses have sort of shifted and changed. But nonetheless, it was a real hub for cycling. It was a real hub for town. It sprung up the idea in my former colleague, Alan Lim, to really build the rice bowl that he offers now at the Scratch Labs Cafe, which is also on Pearl Street.
Yeah.
And even like Chef Kelly Whitaker, just I was in dry storage the other day and was like, can we sit down and talk about the rice bowl at some point in time? Because you guys really crushed the rice bowl. And I was like, yeah, we can totally, if you want to talk about the rice bowl, we can totally do that. So it was something I think Rafa has permeated Boulder in a really important way. You know, the people that live here, as we've talked about, really value their physical activity. We value being out and being in nature. And doing that comfortably and easily and beautifully is something that we value. And so Rafa is a really easy alignment there. And I think that as Boulder shifts and changes, and even as the cycling community shifts and changes, we still need hubs for cyclists to meet and greet. And I think watching the brand change, Rafa used to be a very it's gone through some interesting transitions. Rapha was at one time like a very aspirational brand where everything was about glory through suffering and it felt sort of exclusive and difficult to touch. And frankly, that was something that was really fun about being part of that community, is feeling like you could fit in there and challenge yourself without unapologetically, right?
Hmm.
But Boulder, you know, also needs places for beginners to learn and for other people who are curious about cycling to come and join and to hop on rides and to have places to view racing um and I really genuinely feel that Rafa is growing and shifting and changing with our town here in Boulder. Um, the clubhouse here is unique in ways that are extend beyond just selling clothes, and I think it's really important for us to have those sorts of places in a town like this.
Well, that whole block, right? So,
Yeah.
and sometimes I struggle because I love going in, getting my little latte from Rafa, but my buddy's over here at Boxcar. So the best thing that could have happened to me is that they opened up the new location over by us, and
Yeah.
I'm in there every day. You mentioned Chef Kelly; he's been on the show as well. Can I
Cool.
just tell you, if there's a podium of, my favorite places to go, right, in no particular order, Frasca, Rappa, and dry
Yeah.
storage. It's
Yeah.
my wife is at dry storage so much. They don't have a frequent flyer card, but they kind of have an imaginary one for Gretchen. Oh, Gretchen's here.
I love that. Yeah, we go there all the time. And Kelly and I actually worked at Providence together at the same time.
I thought I recognized the name, right? So he's been real busy working on a cool concept in Oklahoma. I don't know where it is, but
Yep. Yep.
God,
They
God
bought a
bless him.
really cool restaurant. Yeah, they've sort of been like uplifting it. I think it's been I can't speak for them, but I think
Yeah.
and it's been challenging in its own right. And then obviously just, growing Hey Kiddo and expanding expanding Wolf's Taylor and being still so creative with that menu. And I was just talking to a friend the other day about how I want there to be a farm to table community lunch space, like all day cafe in Boulder. And the person that I know that would be best positioned to do that would be Kelly. I just need to like borrow a part of his brain and be like, can you pop up a Justa here?
How do we do this? How do we do this? Hey, Kiddo's amazing, by the way, too.
So
What a
good. Yeah.
fun space, right?
So fun. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, again, Noel's going to start getting anxious here. As we talk about finding nourishment in the unexpected, I hope that we could rewind a little bit to something that completely sort of stopped me in my tracks as I was preparing, right? This story, this vivid story of you on this 100-mile plus bike ride in Japan, when a simple rice ball turned your whole world upside down. So you've described this moment as a turning point when food went from being fuel to being, here's the word again, a joy, a
Yeah.
connection, a catalyst. And here's your another quote: "My black and white life as an athlete was suddenly colored in." Can you take us back to that day and what specifically or not specifically changed for you in that moment? And I'm talking like spiritually, emotionally, physically, of course.
All those things. Yeah.
Yeah, all those things.
Yeah, to kind of quickly paint the picture of what my my professional career started in Okinawa, Japan. My incredible partner, who I'm still very close with, but we're no longer together, we lived on that island together. We called that island our home for about 5 years, and I was there for the duration of that time, and he was only there for about a year and a half because he was often stationed in other theaters around the South Pacific. And so most of my training unfolded by myself. I didn't have training partners. I just would, wake up and go do my job and come home and eat and wake up and do it again. So it's a little bit lonely, but also really fulfilling because if I can be honest, I was putting myself into a place of physical and emotional discomfort that I almost felt like matched my partner's because he was in some really challenging situations as well. And so on this particular day, Okinawa is this beautiful, it's like the Hawaii of Japan. It's this gorgeous island with a very interesting history of, through World War II, and a lot of different cultures have clashed there over centuries. Um, it's actually closer to China than it is to Japan. And the island is kind of like oblong, and it's about 60, we lived right in the smack of this island, and it's about 65 miles to one end and about 65 miles to the other end, and that's the extent of the island, right?
Wow. Wow.
So one of my training rides would be that I would leave our house, which was in the middle of a sugarcane field about 10 minutes from the ocean, and I would spin my bike all the way along the coastline, all the way to the northernmost tip, and I would come back, and that was about 100 and, I would build on a couple a little bit, but I could basically do a 112-mile bike ride, like out and back bike ride. A lot, through these tiny little villages and with cerulean blue seas rolling. It was just beautiful. And I'm a triathlete. I've got a time trial bike. There isn't that much of that going on out there. And my kit, my jersey had these tiny little pockets on the back for my sports nutrition. And I had like a little box on the front of my bike that you still see people using that had some emergency money, like a cell phone that could only send SMS text messages, things like this, which I could, who would I call? I didn't have anybody there to like come and pick me up, right? So I had my little box, I had my little whatever pack, my little pockets filled with snacks, and I start on my way. And about halfway up, it starts to get more and more remote as I'm riding. It's brutally hot. It's like up in the 80s with like 95% humidity. So I'm just drenched in sweat, and I reach into my pocket, and my pocket is empty. Somehow I like pulled something out, and all of my packaged snacks had come out. And I've got another 90 miles to go. When it probably not that far. It's probably like almost about halfway, 60 miles to go, several more hours of riding. And I was just like complete A, depleted physically, but B, just emotionally and psychologically, like, what do I do? Like this is the worst news ever. And so I kind of like unzip my little pouch, and I see that I had some yen inside, just enough to go into there was a Family Mart. If you've ever been to Japan, Family Mart is prolific and such a like beacon of joy, like joy and pleasure, right? This little convenience store. And I take my, tiny little coins in, and I waddle, looking to see what I can afford to buy. And the sliding glass doors open, and this rush of ice cold air conditioning just hits me in the face. And onigiri, of course, are little seasoned rice balls that typically have some kind of filling inside, whether it's um, salmon or salmon salad or seaweed salad or avocado or tuna or whatever it is. And they're wrapped in a piece of seaweed. And at this time, you could buy one for like 2 yen, right?
Mhm.
Less than $2. And I had enough to buy two of these. And I was like, well, I guess this will work. And so I sort of clop back out of the store in my cleats, and I sit down on the parking space, like the little bumpers for the parking spaces. And I sort of dismally eat this thing that's not the nutrition that my coach prescribed to me. And this beautiful rice ball was salty and sweet and savory and umami. And I just remember literally, like if I close my eyes now, I remember that flavor, that taste of being it, as if as if paint dripped down the screen of my life and my body, and I all of a sudden felt whole again. Like, wow, that was not the thing I was planning on eating. And it was exactly what my body required in that moment of total depletion. And I shoveled it into my mouth and like looked for more yen, And as it turns out, there was another experience along that same ride where, as I'm spinning back home again, I sort of stopped to look at the ocean and also fill up a water bottle at a little spigot that I knew about. And there was a man who had been fishing, and he had a woven basket on his back with fish inside, and he saw me and obviously was like, "You look at like an alien. You must be hungry because what are you doing out here?" And he had a stump that he obviously typically frequented, and he pulled the fish out of his bag and first cleaned the fish and filleted it and cut this beautiful, I don't even remember what kind of fish it was, but he also had a little packet of shiso leaves in his pocket, and he pulled out a shiso leaf and he laid this beautiful piece of like bright pink fish on it and squeezed some lemon on it and passed it to me.
Oh my
All
Lord.
things he had in his pocket because this is his meal.
Hmm.
And again, I just was like, wow, like this incredible culinary experience that I wish I could articulate more about in this exact moment. If I thought about it, I probably could do that. But you saw me, you gave me something that you knew that I needed, and we had this really beautiful exchange on a stump near the ocean without any type of pomp or circumstance. And we bowed to each other and you walked away and I went my way. And it was just this like really powerful sense of I got something, I was nourished and fueled by something that was not a gel on this ride. And it was like, the Grinch has his heart explode. My heart had exploded. I was totally in love with training again. I felt so lucky to have had this experience that my bike took me on. And it was just a lesson that has stayed with me since, which is that we are nourished, as we've talked about already, in ways that are beyond measure when we are open and connected and present.
That's got to go in the book. It's a beautiful story, and I kind of feel like I'm there with you. What I find, I guess, powerful here is that this idea, and this goes along with what you said earlier, that this idea of nourishment isn't just calories and macros, right?
Yeah,
It's sensory, as you described, it's emotional, it's cultural, but maybe more than anything, it's deeply sort of human, right? You've never
100%.
forgotten about
Yeah.
this uh, this individual that helped you. Did you know at that moment um, that this would shape the rest of your career, or did that just kind of happen as time went on?
It totally just happened. But it was the
Yeah.
first moment, that several other things happened after that onigiri moment. Um, the first is that I stopped being so strict with myself about whether or not I was eating cleanly and eating exactly the way that my coaches were telling me. And
Hmm.
I started thinking about making my own real food. And particularly that meant carbohydrates because all I really was craving was like cake and muffins, whatever it was. And
Yeah.
that was some of the spark that was like, I need to learn how to do this in a way that's supportive of my goals, which is one of the reasons why I went to culinary school. And so I just really, I felt like if I could um, be in tune with what my body was craving during these really, really challenging efforts, I would be able to feel myself better as opposed to, you know, chicken breast with lemon and no fat or watching carbohydrates or watching whatever it was. When I craved a bowl of pork ramen, that's exactly what I went to go get. And that worked really beautifully for me. I watched my performance climb, I watched my body heal, I watched my rest improve, all of that. And so I had no idea, obviously, that this was an important piece, but one of the threads of my experience and my kind of mindset before we went to Japan was that what I really wanted to be and what my partner was aiming at when he joined the military. Um, I wanted to be in the foreign service. I wanted to be working clandestine services, and I wanted to help support food systems and like basically food security from a
Hmm.
what we then called snoop and poop level, right? Like I wanted to be a spy that helped to support food systems. And as I was on this island, kind of unable to work in a conventional sense because I was a SOFA status military wife, I got the sense that if I wasn't going to go back, I had actually put an international development um, degree program on hold at Johns Hopkins and ended up never attending because I really got the sensation after 5 years of thinking about it on these long bike rides and having these crazy experiences that if I was going to change the world in any way, it was going to be through cookies. It was going to be through food. It was going to be through sharing, like sharing something tangible that was just enough of a seed to plant an idea that would sprout. And that is probably the only piece of congruency between what happened on that day at Family Mart and now.
But the relevance is absolutely amazing. At Escoffier, we talk a lot about the connection of food and a story, right? We ask our instructors to be storytellers, right? Don't
Yeah.
talk at your students, talk with them, because many of them, I can't imagine you being a student in front of me. You have, you know, so much to share, right? And it's changed over 20, 30, 40 years. Especially we have a holistic nutrition and wellness program,
So
and we
cool.
also kind of weave some entrepreneurship into that program for those who would like
That's
to
great.
make this their life work, much like you did.
Yeah.
And your work really embodies that. How do you help people maybe reframe their relationship with food to be more intuitive and less
Yeah.
prescriptive? That's hard. That's
It's hard.
really listen to your body, right? Listen to
Yeah.
to your
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah. I mean, I think something that I actually grapple with very, very presently and in my work is that I studied food policy and social ecology and economics in college, and I was in courses at that time that were talking about our food system and organic food and GMO food and what it meant to eat locally and sustainably and thinking about that from the age of like 19. And it shaped the way that I ate then. And I used to do crazy things. Like I was a rower in college and I would leave practice on Saturday mornings and drive straight to Ithaca where there was a food co-op that sold non-GMO food. And I would come back home with my haul for the week. It was like everyone thought I was an insane person. And I'm still that person. But that's been going on since I was 19. So it's not like um these experiences that I had in Japan they were concrete experiences that solidified everything that I had learned about but had never experienced. And
Hmm.
I genuinely feel that the experience and the trust of having those interactions with food is one of the things that helps us to believe it and embody it, right? But something that is true and something that is really challenging is now we have, even Instagram, like a lot of my business is based on Instagram. It's how clients find me, it's how I tell stories. It's a direct outlet for my work. And it's also such a challenging place because there's so much noise on this platform that's talking about what you can eat, what you can't eat, the latest fad, the latest wellness trend, all of this. And so if I'm honest, I think a lot of the way that I'm able to help teach my clients how to do this is just by example of just being like, I know, I hear you. I understand this is a lot, and this is not new to me. I'm talking about something that's been present since the beginning of man. Like the philosophy I'm talking about is something that's been way older than science. It's way older than the study that was done last month. It's something that's still with us and informed all of our medical systems. And I've been living and doing this since I was 20. So I'm not waffling here. Like I'm really serious. And the sooner you try it and trust it, the sooner it will start working for you. And I think that's probably one of the most powerful selling strategies I have, if I'm honest. And I think there's also a piece of, we've compartmentalized our food in so many ways, or rather it's maybe been compartmentalized for us, an industrial food system that's trying to think about selling product and like where do we put our nitrogen? Oh, by the way, we can put it into packaged products. Like, isn't that so great? And 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 the skill of cooking that didn't get passed down to us because we got busier or something else felt more important. I don't ever meet a client where they're like, oh, I never want to learn to cook. That I don't want to spend my time that way. Like people who are genuinely interested in eating it and supporting their health and their well-being and their families and their joy and their vibrancy with really beautiful food. People who love food want to create more space for it. So I think being able to also translate skills like you don't have to have a culinary degree. These are easy hacks that you can make. Like if you get good ingredients on board, the recipes that I share now have nothing to do with French culinary technique.
Sure. Sure.
I love making chocolate croissant, making pain au chocolat is one of my favorite things to do, and I don't remember the last time that I did it because my own life is quite full of tasks and things I'm juggling, and yet eating in a way that keeps me connected and is simple and rooted in whole, beautiful ingredients that came from the earth is 100% the way that we eat in our house. And so teaching that sort of like, I don't want to say like hacked skill set, but like this is all you need to know how to do. You don't need to know how to do, you don't need to have a deep culinary background, but know how to do this and trust yourself and trust that you can't mess it up,
Trust is
right?
important, and you can build upon that. And I don't want
Totally.
to take away from the secrets that you provide your
Mm,
customers, your guests, your team. But for students that'll listen to our chat, and even
yeah,
other guests who may be stuck in this kind of, I'll call it a rules-based approach to nutrition, is there any advice? I'm going to come back to the word joy again. That's the theme of this of our show today. Is what's the advice to tap into your joy and trust at the table?
totally.
It's easy to hear you, it's easy to say it, but
Yeah.
how do you trust yourself to do it?
I think one of the most, so I talk a lot about routine with my clients because yes, I'm a holistic chef. Yes, I'm a classically trained pastry chef. Yes, I've worked in food for a very long time. But ultimately, if we don't have life practice that's allows us to understand that the choices that we're making are working for us, it doesn't really matter what we're eating, right? And so I talk about routine a lot in my work, and it's one of the first things that I recommend to clients is taking 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour and a half to unplug from noise and just sit with ourselves. And Ayurveda, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but offers a lot of different ways that we can fill this time. It's often called meditation. Sometimes it's called pranayama, which means breath work. Sometimes it's a yoga practice. Sometimes it's journaling these days. Sometimes it's just me, in my own practice, laying on the patio at our house, just like listening to the birds and kind of just trying to like breathe and feel my body again. But creating this time and space to go like, how am I feeling and what is that? Why might I be feeling that way? My one-on-one client work goes hand in hand with a conversation around the doshas, which are three bioenergies that Ayurvedic medicine hinges on. So understanding where wind is prevalent, where fire is prevalent, where earth or like groundingness is present. Being able to go like, I'm feeling really well. At the beginning of our chat, you're like, I'm constantly spinning around. And so I can say like, cool, well, there's a lot of wind in your personality. And so understanding whether or not that's feeling exhausting or whether or not that's feeling inspirational, two ways that wind can work for us is the charge. And so I think that it really is like comes right down to unplugging. We must unplug, not because digital media is bad for us, not because it's toxifying our system, but because it's taking us away from really listening. And if we've got a few moments every single day to listen and go, I'm feeling hungry, I'm feeling thirsty, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling excited, whatever it is, these are all hints on ways that we can nourish ourselves, what our bodies really need, right? And so
I
that's
just
a
want you to
big
know that
key. Yeah.
Gretchen's going to call you this week and say thank you. That you can bill me. You just invoice me. Just invoice me. One of the things, Lentine, that I find so compelling, I guess, honest and truthful about your story is it's a long word, but it's multidimensional, right? Your
Mhm.
journey wasn't a straight line. And even
Totally.
though you're a pastry chef, so technically you're very linear. However, you're creative, and it isn't a straight line. You created your own map, from the ultra endurance
Mhm.
experiences in Japan to patisserie training at Le Cordon Bleu, and now you work with Ayurvedic. You're a counselor, yoga teacher, a holistic nutrition practitioner. It's like this mosaic, right?
Mhm.
Kind of like the background in your kitchen. You once said the unconventional combination of these inquiries has made me a highly intuitive and suitable, credible word, teacher for others interested in achieving their greatest potential. How did you learn um, for yourself the process of weaving all of that together rather than trying to fit it into one role? Or are you still working on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, the thing that as I'm hearing you talk and going like, oh yeah, I guess all that stuff has happened, right? Um,
This is really
in
good for me.
Yeah, in my mind, it all stems from the same place. Like it all came from there wasn't a lot of leaping around, if that makes sense. While each
Yeah,
of
yeah.
these different what I'll say like disciplines, but or curiosities is better. Each of these different curiosities that look very different on paper, what they all have in common is a certain amount of discipline.
Mm.
And I
There's
think
that word again.
that's something that actually really landed for me in culinary school. I think I was always in love with pastry. I was always in love with food and particularly pastry and just so turned on by the idea that I could create anything, right? But probably the most important thing that I gained from culinary school that's helped me for the rest of my career is watching the way that my brain worked. And I am actually a very linear and organized person. And if I have that structure or that foundation, and this is something that applies to Ayurveda too, and that Ayurveda only deepened my understanding of this importance. If I have this like solid structure, then I can explore and be super creative and super generous and ebullient and can dive really, really deep so long as I can still have touch to this straight line, which I think probably for me had a lot to do with like staying true to myself, staying connected to nature, being um honoring the earth, like be
Hmm,
like
hmm.
staying true to like an environmental ethic that is still very important to me. And all of the things that I pursued and continue to pursue have that same backbone. So I think, being able to do things in culinary school, like do my mise en place and recognize what that did to my brain and go like, oh my gosh, I feel so dialed right now. Before attending culinary school, I was definitely the person who, like, I can think about this with a recipe where I would be so intent on the recipe, but maybe I wouldn't set everything up right. And so there would be some flub and it wouldn't turn out the way that I expected or that I knew that it could. Or maybe I didn't measure properly, or maybe I didn't give myself enough time to make the thing happen. And all of life was like that, where there was just like maybe a little bit of a loose end. And attending culinary school and like locking that in and going, first, I've got to set the stage every time. Mise en place in my life, mise en place, Ayurveda, like it's something that I think actually really sets me apart from my colleagues that work in Ayurveda because generally speaking, I'm much more like calculated individual than most, say, body workers or holistic practitioners. And so the tail ends of the business, right? Start like I didn't track of the numbers, I didn't organize the thing, like I don't have a system for that. I'm just like swirling around this work with love, and that's awesome. But I think the way that I've learned, I really need to be able to thrive um, as a practitioner, as a chef, is with that foundation. And so um, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
There's a lot there, and I'm going to do the dive.
Yeah.
Here's the deep dive. So there's
Okay.
so many things. It's so funny. My son is a sophomore in high school, and the word locked in is
Yeah.
something I learned from him, right? It's
Yeah.
very, very prevalent in those spaces today. He kind of giggles when I say it, but I love it. He's got a baseball game. I got to be locked in, Dad. So you must be so good with your clients because I feel changed and I didn't pay you. I feel changed sitting here right today. But you just be prepared because Noel will reach out. Your
Okay.
comments about mise en place and how that was connected to culinary school is a very, very, very powerful quote. And we'll get your permission to use it. But
Sure.
I think this is such an important moment, for me, for our students to hear, because many of our students come to us trying to figure out how to blend their passions. The word passion is used a lot, right? And
Totally.
sometimes people don't understand what a passion is. Um, Culinary arts, wellness. I'm entrepreneurial. I want to have my own business. I'm wondering, or they're wondering, like, is it too much?
Yeah.
I'm suggesting here, listening to you just for a short time, Lentine, that all can be your superpower. That can
Totally.
all really come together in a beautiful way. I'm so excited about this next subject, culinary school. What what our guests don't know is that, we have a connection there because you went to Cordon Bleu in Portland, and I was highly involved with that organization back in those days. I went to that school. We talked about Anjali, who was one of your pastry instructors. She's going to be so excited to hear that we talked today. I'm going to send her a text. Um, is it I'm not going to go like for that magical moment, but I'm wondering, Lentine, what do you say to, I was going to say students, but to a human being who
Mhm.
feel like they have to choose a lane?
Yeah.
Like it's either chef or it's coach or it's creative or it's practical or it's linear or it's all over the place. Um, Again, it's a tough question, but do they have to choose right away?
I mean, I definitely didn't choose.
Yeah.
I
And it
definitely
all
didn't
worked
choose,
out, right?
and it all worked out. Yeah, I mean, I think kind of like to piggyback on the previous question, all of the different curiosities that I've pursued were all things that felt right to me. I was interested in them. I could see themes between yoga and culinary nutrition. I could see themes between and maybe it was just irony, right? Like I want to be able to use croissants for my Ironman training like that, but I could see why that wasn't important. Like that made sense. My
Yeah,
body
yeah.
needed those things. So, so long as there is passion and just like I'm a true believer that we have gut feelings about things, about the foods that we eat, the people that we want to align with, the places we want to live, the partnerships we want to enter into. And so that's where kind of taking that space to think and feel about it is right. And we never know until we try. We never know if a lane is right for us until we've sort of stepped into it and knowing we can always step out. But something that I think has is pertinent is that there's no like you can always change lanes, right? You can always change lanes.
Yes,
And
yes.
you also like there's a lot of reasons to want to do that. As a person who I think I can actually safely say spent very little time in professional culinary kitchens. I really only worked as a pastry chef in that format for about a year and a half. It was a very high-end restaurant. We did really, really beautiful food. And all the other things that I've done in my career have definitely tied to, I'm a chef. But um, that was not a vein that spoke to me. It was not where my strengths lied. I got my inspiration about what I wanted to cook from being outside. And at the time that I graduated from culinary school, there wasn't a path like that. First of all, there weren't that many women that were in the kitchen the way that they are right now. This was like, 2010. There just weren't that many women that were popping up in the kitchen and powerhousing through this, incredible piece of our society. And there certainly weren't any chefs for athletes, which is what I told myself I wanted to be. And I wondered why that was true. And so I honestly like I just couldn't hack it. Like I didn't have the energy, I didn't have the passion or the drive to stay in that particular environment anymore. And so it wasn't an option for me to like I watched my own health and well-being deteriorate. And I did know that if I couldn't, take care of myself, I couldn't show up to work the next day. There were a lot of other patterns that I saw starting to unfold for chefs around me to keep the pace of life that they had to keep to stay in their lane. And I think that's one of the first things that we sort of lose as modern human beings is the notion that we have to check the box.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
there are a lot of ways to be a culinary professional, so many ways that if you don't explore other lanes and use your personal experience to infuse your food, your work, your inspiration, then you don't get to be this thing, as it turns out.
So well said. Couple of comments. And I always try to find analogies to be a better parent as well, right? I could remember my son, pretty good baseball player, starts as a freshman in high school, and there's a lot of kids playing different positions, and the coach came to him, and he had he wanted to be the first baseman, he wants to play for the Cubs, yada yada yada. But without any prompting from me, coach said, where do you want to play? And having the foresight of knowing, well, there's these two kids over here and there's that one kid on varsity. I'll play wherever you need me to play, coach.
Yeah.
Talk about changing lanes, right?
Yeah.
Unprompted by, by daddy. Um, I I hoped we talked about this a little bit before, again off script. When we think about Ayurveda and its connection to food, I told you that one of my daughters is a doctor of physical therapy who also has studied this. And can you help me better articulate to my wife how the two are the same while
Connected.
being different?
Totally. Well, they are I'll say they're not the same. Actually, they're not even close to being the same. But I think we can
She'll
think
love to hear
about
that she was somewhat
yeah
right. Yeah.
yeah. But I think we can say that not even I think we can say that Ayurveda is one lens through which to view things, right? Um,
Beautiful.
and it is a very old lens, and it is one that the history of Ayurveda, or sort of like the nutshell about this, is that Ayurveda is a medicinal system that popped up in the Indian subcontinent. We think we think about 9,000 years ago, but we know at least 6,000 years ago because in the Stone Age, when we got writing implements, the texts that my colleagues and I study was written down. And in these texts, they talk about how, first of all life is created from the same building blocks, the same five earth elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. No matter how things were created, they use whatever entity that created the universe used the same Legos. And so whether it's like the water in my glass or the molecules in my body or the screen of my phone, you can think about like that, like a different Lego system that just has different shapes. And this philosophy goes so far as to suggest that in the natural world, these earth elements lump together to create dosha, or bioenergy. And there are three of these. We have vata, pitta, and kapha. So vata is the wind, or the composition of wind and ether. Pitta is the fire and the water, and kapha is earth and water. And because all of us are created from the same elements, we all have uniqueness, right? We all have fingerprints. We also have unique bioenergies, which means that we have different callings, different ways of expressing ourselves, different passions, different drives, and we can doesn't mean that our work ends up looking that much different, but the way that we arrive at that work looks different, to sort of, relate to our previous conversation. And this is really, really important because from Ayurvedic nutritional philosophy, the way that we eat needs to be in line with our own constitution. So
Mm,
the
mm,
fad diet of like 150 grams of protein a day for every single person doesn't fit for all constitutions. I'm a unique individual. I need different things than somebody else might.
mhm, mhm,
Um, and these bioenergies shift through the seasons, which is how we get a bounty in the fall, which is how we get blossoms in the spring, which is how we get dormancy and hibernation in the winter, all of which are incredibly important for all natural life to subsist and thrive. And so this is a medicinal system that informed Chinese medicine. It informed Western medicine for the most part. And while there aren't that many threads that now are looking at 6,000-year-old systems because we're leaping forward with other types of things, there are a lot of practitioners that still reflect and refer to this system. And so, from a perspective of like, kind of to take it back to physical therapy is a Western or an allopathic modality that looks at the physical structures of the body and
mhm.
seeks to undo patterns that have permeated that system. But from an Ayurvedic viewpoint, the mind, the body, and the spirit are one. So something that we eat impacts both the way we think and how we feel in our body. The way we feel impacts the way that we digest our food and the way that our bodies assimilate it. And the digestive system, or the way that we're able to process that food, changes the way that the mind and the spirit are able to function. So there's no separating those things. And so an Ayurvedic perspective laid on to something like physical therapy means that we're returning to this totally holistic way of thinking about things, where all the things we think, all the things we feel, and all the things we eat deeply, deeply, deeply matter to our well-being. And that is, to me, like a really valuable thing to add on to an allopathic modality like physical therapy, because if we can think about that, we might find a solution faster than just doing, like, I used to get IT band issues when I was a super swimmer. You doing my like IT band stretches, if I actually think about why my body might be getting tight in the upper regions around the heart center where kapha is based, and think about the way that joy might be able to like leave my like am I telling my boyfriend how I feel? Because if I'm not, I'm keeping that in and that's actually contracting those muscles in that part of the, so all of that goes into comes into play.
I am so appreciative. My daughter, when she was in grad school, did a report and that's when I was first introduced to this concept and understood it a little bit more. I couldn't help her with the content, so I
Sure.
focused on the grammar.
Yeah, that's great.
I'll send it to you. I still have it. I still
I would
have it.
love that.
And she'll be so excited to know that we talked. Before I kind of venture on, Noelle's really cringing now. Are you okay, time?
I'm good on time.
You're good?
I have,
Okay.
yeah, I have a client at 12:45, but I'm good on time otherwise.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about performance nutrition.
Sure.
Um, you've worked with some serious athletes, but what I appreciate is how, and in getting to know you, I appreciate your kind of human first approach, if I'm saying that okay. Not
Yeah.
metrics first. I'm sure it's different for everyone, but that's the sense I get. You've talked about the dangers of attaching morality to food,
Yeah.
clean, dirty, good, bad, especially in performance culture. Um, and here's another quote. I quote, I was doing everything right and still
Mhm.
didn't feel nourished.
Mhm.
What shifts do you hope to see in the way athletes, chefs, and even, the average eater think about
Mhm.
performance and fuel? Is it is it going in a direction that you're comfortable with, that you're
Yeah.
helping guide? Are you worried?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think the first thing I want to say that it actually doesn't really matter whether you are a chef or an entrepreneur or a badass mom or a professional athlete. Um, we call this dharma, like your calling, like your work in the world deserves performance nutrition. And so it's not like often
Mm.
have clients who are like everyday athletes who say, well, I'm not a professional athlete, so maybe I don't need to do that. And I'm like, no, 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 no. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Your body is your body, your spirit, your mind are your vehicle to carry this out. So it matters. And so the shifts that I am seeing are actually in polarity, right? I think there's a really big movement right now of some individuals who are wanting to take more charge of their health with different shifts and changes that are happening in our healthcare system. We're no longer trusting that system to take good care of us or to provide for the exorbitant cost of caring for us. And what I'm talking, like I shared something on social media this morning. I was up in the high country for a photo shoot and for a hike yesterday with a really dear friend of mine. And as I was thinking about what a question a client had asked me, which was like, well, what supplements do I take? I was like, these are the supplements. Like sunshine, fresh air, like smell the grass, move your body and sweat a little bit. That I literally am not taking any other supplements, and I recommend that you don't do that either. It's free. There's no cost associated with it. I don't need to have follow-up appointments. There's no big, lab costs for this. There's no refill costs. And there is a population of people who are really, really drawn towards this way of thinking. And I think that it's going to become a necessity, especially with political climate and some other things. We're going to need to take more care of ourselves. We're going to need to take on that responsibility, which is something that we have kind of outsourced in a lot of ways. And so that's really hopeful. Um, I'm always so pleased to see, sometimes I'm just like sitting up here in my own little hole in Boulder and like wondering if anyone's listening. And there are people listening and really responding to the way that I'm sharing Ayurveda, the way that this type of wisdom, or not even wisdom, just like perspective is entering the
Perspective.
world. But at the same time, we are more than ever, biohacking. Like something that came to me this morning as I was doing my own exercises was why are we trying to hack our biology? Like biology is so smart. The natural world created us and was here before all this science biohacking. So why are we trying to just continue to stray further or do the job for a system that's quite smart? And I'm constantly seeing new products, new powders, new comments, and all of this is commercialization. All of this is someone with a crafty idea and a patent, and they're pitching it to you. Um, And that feels dismal, if I'm honest.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
like, like every time I see some shiny new product pop up that seems like that seems easy, it's just one more thing that I'm going to have to like suggest why it's not. And that something I experience in my work often is I get hit with a lot of scientific research and also a lot of like nutritional and wellness fads. And I kind of run them through the Ayurvedic lens. And sometimes they pop out on the other side. And I'm like, that's what Ayurveda has been talking about. This is awesome. This is something we've known for 6,000 years. We know this works. And other times I'm like, cool, we've totally just gotten like 8 degrees separated from the way that this should work, like, and we could talk about what those fads are, but so it's kind of both. Um, I I hope and feel that I'm helping to guide and give an example of ways that this perspective and this really like ancient philosophy can be used in a modern way for somebody who's very busy and very active and doesn't have a lot, I don't have a lot of time to cook these days, but I am able to find the time I need to make this happen. And that's kind of all it distills down to is if we start cooking for ourselves with ingredients that are whole and real from people in our communities, like that's enough of a shift. You don't have to buy into any of the other stuff. You don't have to know the doshas, you don't have to know Sanskrit, you don't have to know the bioenergies. If we return to cooking and cooking with food that looks good, feels good, is from hands that we know and trust, that is a really, speaks volumes for our health and well-being as a society, I think.
And you know what's so beautiful about everything you're saying today, especially right there, is your um, genuine humility. Just correcting yourself from the word wisdom to perspective. I'm going to call it wisdom, but wisdom to perspective is just, it
Mm.
brings me joy. I really,
Oh,
really appreciate
thanks.
that. Gretchen's going to be dry. I'm paying more attention to you than do to her on any given day.
Oh,
I'd love to touch on something very, very special that you've created, and I hope it's okay to bring it up. Your recipe club,
oh yeah,
um, which is not just this place to get recipes, right? It's this space where food is sort of an entry point
yeah,
to perhaps something deeper,
totally.
lifestyle, better word, community. And so, in trying to connect this to my students, for Escoffier students who want to build their own wellness focused brands or, lifestyle and all of that, what have you learned, Lentine, about building community versus just offering content?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm learning that still.
Yeah.
The recipe club, well, first, when I sort of like left professional kitchens, um, I was like, I'm going to be a chef for athletes. I don't know how that's going to work out. But the first place that I started thinking about sharing recipes was with magazines and publications that were speaking to triathletes and runners and cyclists and that sort of thing. So I started sort of pitching recipes to those outlets. And I also had a blog where I was publishing my own journey. I was publishing things I was cooking along the way and how I was training, where I was racing, that sort of stuff. And obviously, my career grew and I did other things, and always I just kept this blog. And then found myself in a space where I was really doing like nutrition, like holistic nutritional consulting for athletes. And during the pandemic, all of the trips that I had to go meet these athletes and spend time with them and cook for them live were gone.
Mm.
And I had to get really creative about how I was going to sustain myself in a time where all of my resources were now had dried up. And as we all remember, this was a time when we couldn't go to restaurants, so we started cooking more, and this was really powerful. And so I popped up a recipe club on Patreon and told my social media community about it, and that was how it all began. Um, and I've been publishing a recipe every single week since March of 2020. And we now have obviously over 400 recipes on the website, and there's over 800 members in Recipe Club. And it's actually that the information shared in Recipe Club is a recipe that is designed with my philosophy. Obviously, I'm an athlete, and I'm not competing anymore, but I'm still moving my body and like taking care of my son and running my business and some other things. So I need to use that high performance nutrition. But when I finished when I finished my Ayurvedic training program in 2022, I really started infusing deep into those recipes Ayurvedic philosophy on flavor, which our bodies don't perceive macronutrients, they perceive flavors. The way we taste something sends messages to the digestive system about what
Hmm.
enzymes to
Hmm.
produce so we can break that down. So hopefully these recipes, which are structured so they talk about the flavors that are in each ingredient, are helping to teach this way of thinking about food, which is that flavor must be first, and it's really important to include as many of the flavors as possible when we eat. And then there's also a description of like why I created the recipe and why I might not have made it a different way. I think this is the only recipe, like I love the New York Times recipes, and there's so often something on there where I'm like, that's not the way I'm going to do this. I'm going to leave this out, or this is just not going to suit my needs for digestive health, etc. So these are things that Recipe Club subscribers can benefit from because they're all built into the recipe and all the information is there. You can just scroll down to the recipe and make it if you want, or you can kind of do your own deep dive. And then just this April, I launched actually another community or a membership platform that I'm calling Back to Forward, which is kind of like the behind the scenes recipes, behind the recipes, things that make this philosophy tick. And I feel like this is actually where the exponential increase of community is something I've really felt, where from the moment of its launch, this community has been really, really well received. There's something like we have almost 100 members already in this particular space who are curious and excited about Ayurveda and about using it in a modern way. And um, putting out, it's part of my job to put out content into the broad world to try to catch people and try to get them to come in. But sort of similar to the conversation that we had earlier about straying from a path, on paper, I am a certain type of person, and I'm now resting my laurels and building my work as a holistic chef and nutritionist and an Ayurvedic practitioner. And specifically, there are a lot of holistic chef and nutritionists out there. And as we all know, you don't actually have to have, like, I'm a board certified holistic nutritionist, but you do not have to have any qualification to call yourself a nutritionist. You can take a course online and in a day you could become a nutritionist. And so much of the conversation sounds the same. What actually creates community around my content, I believe and feel, is my story and my experience and my perspective. And it's harder to create content that feels authentic to me than just to follow the model of what someone else is putting out. Like, oh, there's so and so's weight loss program. Like, do I need to put out a weight loss program? Do I like this is my, like here's my bikini flex. Like, do I? I'm not doing that. I'm not doing the bikini. Just being able to use that filter of like, what would I want to hear? Like, what turns me off about this, and what do I really want people to know? As opposed to how can I get followers fast? It's taken a long time to build the community that I have, and it's still growing slowly and authentically. But I feel like if I can't put something out into the world that I think provides real, true benefit and insight, I'm not going to put it out there. There's
I
plenty
love
of
the word
that already.
authentic. Some of the most fabulous human beings, individuals that we've had on the show have that as the common denominator, the
Mm,
concept of being authentic. Again, another, rule for parenting, try to help your children be somewhat authentic, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
there's so much. You mentioned that you create content. That's kind of your job. It's kind of my job as well. Everyone's creating content. It's
Mm,
absolutely crazy. Um, just a couple more questions, I
yeah,
promise.
you're fine. No problem.
I want to jump in back to, holistic nutrition and kind of what comes next. You've said before, we're not just feeding our bodies, we're feeding lives, creativity, and possibility. Love that. That really feels in sync on how we try to approach our holistic nutrition program here at the school at Escoffier. It's not just what's, on the plate, it's about what's possible because of what's on the plate. I'm really curious with all of that as a backdrop. You've worked across so many different disciplines that we've learned about today, from sports to wellness, to being a partner, culinary arts, you're an entrepreneur, you're coaching, you're building community. Um, what does, and it's this is the toughest question. Well, the second toughest question. What does success look like for you now? Is it,
Mm,
and I mean specifically, is it a feeling?
mm,
Is it a project?
Hmm.
Or is it even bigger than that? Is it a mission?
That's a really good
You
question.
can pause. That's tough.
Yeah, I think it's twofold actually. I, we discussed how I had this onigiri moment on in the parking lot of a convenience store and how that sort of sparked an idea that led to a backbone of personal work and exploration and a variety of different things that I explored just in as a way of learning about myself and figuring out how I could do something that felt authentic to me through my career. And I never thought of myself actually as like a thought leader in this. I was just doing the thing that felt authentic to me to do. And over the past couple of years, it's become apparent to me that I'm not doing it the same way that everybody's doing it, like really, truly. And um I feel now, and I have a 2-year-old son now whom I'm watching his little seeds sprout in the world. I'm watching the way that we do things here in our house. I'm watching the way he's going to preschool now, and I see how that's like growing a human being from seed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's wonderful.
Not,
It's wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel really strongly that there have been a lot of valuable lessons learned accidentally, some intentionally along this path. And I felt it work for me and felt it work for thousands of other clients and people in my community now. And so it's become more of a mission to, like, I joked with somebody the other day, I was like, I'm not trying to build an empire. But I really see a
That's
place where there
fair.
could,
That's
yeah,
fair, right? Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
really see the possibility of creating more tools and deeper understanding for the subtle ways that our physical, emotional, and psychological beings work, that anyone can use and want to be able to share those with the world. And I want to be able to, I don't have a system. Like, people don't enter my work and like enter into my 5-step system. I basically, bring you into a way of thinking about things, and then you take these seeds and bloom yourself. And I just want to spread them as far as I possibly can. And I recognize, your other question was, what does success look and feel like to you? There've been a couple of really, really cool invitations that I've received from the outside world this year that have not blossomed into the exact shape that we want them to yet. And the way that that's been driven is by just like general feeling of like, this feels right, or this feels like maybe not in alignment yet. And so success to me feels like being able to stay true to this backbone of taking good care of myself, harvesting the lessons from that, translating them into a way that other people can digest them, and exploring and gathering tools to better inform that work, and feeling those kind of like, at the cost of sounding super woo here, like the energetic alignment of like, this feels like a good fit and this is something I want to pursue, because that really led me down the right paths of pursuing Ayurveda and exploring yoga and learning breath work and going to culinary school. All of those were pieces that were like, this feels like the right thing for me right now. So staying in that place where I can feel when it's the right thing and being ready and fueled to pounce is success to me.
And it's the right answer, right? It's very consistent with everything we've talked about today. You're a great teacher, and I'll tell you why. Um, in many ways, you flipped the classroom today, right? You
Oh.
you haven't even at one point, not at any point, have you kind of lectured me or talked to our audience. You're talking with our audience, right? It's really,
Mhm.
really important. We tried to do this with our, we've tried to do this over the last couple of years with our faculty. Listen, listen,
Mhm.
you can gain so much from your audience. So I really want to thank you for that. Being a
Pleasure.
storyteller is a really, really amazing thing.
Hmm.
And I feel like I've just listened to a story today.
Oh,
Um,
thank you, Kirk.
I do have one more question.
You got it. Yeah.
The
I'm
name
I'm
of
so
the
fine. Yeah. Yeah.
the name of the show is The Ultimate Dish, and I can't let you go. I could ask you your top three bands of all time. We didn't get to that. I love that answer. That question always gets people kind of riled up. But um, in your mind, what is the ultimate dish?
Oh man.
And
I
it
thought you were
could
going
be
to
that
ask my
rice
like my
cake.
best taste memories, but which isn't a whole other question. Um,
Memories are good too, by the way. That's
yeah.
two different things, but
Yeah. I mean,
equally
I think
important.
that how do I want to answer this question? There's a clinician side that wants to answer it by saying, well, the perfect dish is something that contains all six flavors and is easy for us to digest and is in line with the seasons. And as it turns out, I suppose my non-clinician answer is not that different, but uses different language. And I think that the perfect dish, I think this is actually something that really turned me on about becoming a chef and studying food and being and working in food was, in my kind of like early 20s, I did a lot of traveling. I was living in Italy for a little while, working as a journalist, which was a really funny piece of my history. And I was living there alone. I didn't speak any Italian. And so I was navigating this very, you know, um, culturally rich place from a American food perspective. And so going to the market and watching the little old ladies like ask for the tomatoes and look for the perfect peaches. And I was there for about a year. And so just like watching the way that they asked for what they needed and took it and brought it home and da 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 da, learning their recipes and eating at restaurants by myself. And there were so many incredible things that I tasted during those years. And then obviously I had some of these same experiences when I was living in Asia and have had experiences since. And the perfect thing is like whatever is being offered up by the natural world in that moment, whether it's me sitting on the back porch with my son eating a peach that's so juicy, it's like dripping down his chin, like all over his face, or it's, the simple culmination of the ingredients that we have in the fridge with the time that I have to put something together so I can enjoy it with my family. um, there's the perfect dish can be in anything if we're paying attention to the subtleties around it, I suppose.
I'm not surprised by your answer. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's similar in many ways to, we have a very good friend. His name is Lee Jones. He goes by Farmer Lee Jones. He has a beautiful family farm in Ohio. And if you ask him that, and he gets asked that a lot, chefs
Yeah.
call and say, what should I put on the menu? His response is real simple: whatever's in season.
What's in
That's the
season?
perfect dish. Could be
Yeah.
an apple at a roadside. It could be the peach you just mentioned. It could be
Yeah.
a zucchini in the field. It can be anything.
Yeah.
So
And that kind of to take this one layer further, like the way that that actually ties into my work is that when we think about when we talk about what's in season from an agricultural perspective, we're talking about what nature's providing in that moment. But when I work with clients one-on-one, I'm talking about watching the weather outside, like what's the weather outside doing? That's telling us what we should be eating and how to be responding. When are we resting? But we also have to watch the weather inside because the
mm,
weather outside impacts the weather inside. And so what's in season for us in this outward season is also a very unique thing, Like when my son's requesting graham crackers, he's actually doing that. He's going like, here's my in season and my out season, and here's what I really need, and that's graham crackers, mom. And so trusting that like what is my in season, what is in season for me right now is always the right answer,
I love it.
particularly when it's in alignment. Yeah.
It's where Mother Nature's natural rhythm meets
Yeah.
Mama's natural
Yeah.
rhythm.
That's right. That's
Oh
right.
my,
Yeah.
what a fantastic show. Lentine,
Oh, thanks,
thank you,
Kirk.
thank you. We learned, um, we heard the word discipline a few times, which I love. We
Hmm.
learned about Snoop and Poop. And more
Yep.
than anything, we learned and we felt and we heard joy.
Hmm.
And the joy of
Thank you.
cooking, the joy of living, the joy of loving. Just an absolutely beautiful show. You have a friend in Escoffier. We are here
Hmm.
in Table Mesa. We do a lot of really really cool things. We do stuff with Jake Plummer, with Lauren Lewis, with Kelly Newland and Bobby Stuckey, and we have one of our classrooms named after Frasca. We uh,
Cool.
we feel that we are in the Boulder lane and we love being here. But
Yeah.
best wishes always. If we can ever do anything, I'm going to send you a paper that my
Cool.
daughter wrote, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much for taking over an hour of your valuable
Oh,
time to hang with
oh,
us.
good. Thanks so much for inviting me. It was such a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm honored and flattered.
Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish Podcast, brought to you by Augusta Scoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast to find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. And if you can, please leave us a rating on Apple or Spotify and subscribe to support our show. This helps us reach more aspiring individuals ready to take the next step toward their dream careers. Thanks for listening.